Now, at precisely 22 minutes past 3 this morning, Flybe, the UK's largest regional airline, went into administration. It means the jobs of over 2,000 staff are at serious risk. Eoghan Corry joins me now. He's editor of Travel Extra. Eoghan, we've heard that Flybe was in some trouble over the past few months, so this does not come completely out of the blue.
No, not out of the blue, and as you say, they had been in trouble. They'd got a very peculiar bailout package from the Westminster government. It involved late payment of airline passenger duty, the tax that's collected from every passenger, and immediately there was a cacophony of cry from the other rival airlines, including Willie Walsh of IAG and Michael O'Leary of Ryanair, saying we need a level playing field here. This amounts to state aid of a certain kind. What was happening is that the regions in England are very, very heavily dependent on Flybe, and the government had a lot of their new MPs saying we got to do something to keep the likes of Exeter and Southampton and places like that open. The nail in the coffin was the last week. Overall, throughout the industry, they've been riding the coronavirus. It's in the 7 or 8 weeks that it's been around without too much of an impact. But over the last week, forward bookings came down very, very seriously. Most of the airlines that I was talking to in Brussels this week on Tuesday said it was around 25-30%, and anybody who doesn't have a lot of cash was going to hurt, and Flybe are the first casualty of that process, may not be the last.
Now, do you expect further intervention, Eoghan, by the British government to try to save the airline, or are they basically gone, do you think?
I don't think there's any chance of them recovering. At 7 o'clock yesterday, the Ernst & Young staff were heading to airports, so the social media was very, very much alive. And then we had an aircraft seized just before 9 o'clock in Glasgow, presumably for airport charges. And once the website came down very, very shortly afterwards. So once somebody moves on an aircraft and there are debts outstanding in many, many different directions, including to Irish leasing companies, there is no real recovery. What we may see, which isn't the same thing, is reconstitution of some of the parts of Flybe, including with Stobart Airways. They're based out of Swords, the former Air Aran. They are a part owner to try and save the regions of England, because the British government will come under very serious pressure to try and get some sort of air connectivity out of the regions. But certainly Flybe, as we know it, is gone. And the big question, and it needs to be asked, is there were very, very wealthy people involved in the rescue package for Flybe a year ago, including the likes of Richard Branson. And while they weren't going to put their hand in their own pocket to see the airline through, they were asking the British government to put taxpayers' money into it. What was going on there? So I suspect all of those questions will be asked in different forums over the next few weeks.
So how will the gap in the market be filled, would you reckon, Eoghan? I mean, there's regional airports like Southampton, for instance, in the UK, Exeter as well, Belfast in Northern Ireland, a lot of flights there. Who's going to pick up the slack?
There isn't any airline of that scale, but certainly Stobart will be looking in and Logan will be looking in there. And Belfast, as you say, is very seriously affected. It's the grand total of 3 destinations left this morning. It's lost 14 in one fell swoop, and it's lost nearly 72% of its entire passenger traffic for the year. So it raises questions about the viability of a lot of the airports. The one Dublin route that listeners would be familiar with is the Southampton route, which was favoured by cruise people picking up cruises out of Southampton. But when you look through the network, a lot of the routes would have been very important in rural England, places like Newquay and Cornwall and Exeter, and there is a huge gap there. It isn't quite clear what can be done to fill it, but the British government may be in a better position to move because they will no longer be subject to EU regulation in terms of state aid for other airlines, should they choose one to try and fill the gap.
OK, Eoghan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Eoghan Corry there, editor of Travel Extra.